Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen nabiyyina Muhammadi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Amma ba'du, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to our daily fiqh hour, or FiqHour, or however which way is supposed to be pronounced. Khair, I was busy scheduling my Ramadan timetable a little bit today as well. We had Maulana contacting us from the Masjid al-Hidayah, which is in BD 13. So I have scheduled some lectures, inshallah, there as well. So I was just writing that up, sharing it with colleagues as well, so my schedule gets done. Finalize my schedule by next week, inshallah. So by Thursday, Friday, it should be done. And then we'll be able to get things clear and ready to go as we wait in anticipation for Ramadan. Anyway, that said, let's get back to the script for today. And the script for today is about the whole concept of hadith. Let me just give the little blurb, as the saying goes. Where is our little blurb? Little blurb is... There's a little blurb. So the little blurb is exploring the chain of narrations for hadith. Why does this system exist? How does it function? And what are its benefits? So in order to explain that, I did say I may use bits out of my book here. So I will, inshallah, use bits out of that book. But let me just explain. We have two sources, okay? One is the Quran, and the second is the Ahadith, okay? So let's talk a little bit about the Quran. I appreciate today we're not talking about the Quran, we're talking about the Hadith, but let me explain a little bit about the Quran. So the Quran was being revealed, sometimes a chunk of an ayah, sometimes a whole surah. And there are reports that certain surahs were revealed twice or on numerous occasions. These were, as they were being revealed, being recited in some cases to the companions that were there, or afterwards they were being recited to companions, and those companions would write them, scribe them down. And they would use parchments, leather parchments, skins of animal. They would use bone. They would use whatever they could get their hands on, literally, in order to record those verses that were coming down. Many of them would memorize them. They had exceptional memories, and they would memorize them. And the Prophet ﷺ himself was one of them who would memorize them. And then these would be recited as well. So you found, for example, in the daily prayers, Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, the Prophet ﷺ would recite them. The companions would hear them. And every year, Jibreel ﷺ would come and he would listen and do dawr with the Prophet ﷺ to listen to him reciting the Quran back to Jibreel ﷺ. And therefore, so you have this fail-safe system in order to ensure that revelation was preserved as it descended from the heavens. Then, obviously, even the Prophet ﷺ would instruct as to where each surah would go, and similarly in terms of order. And similarly, he would also suggest when there were single ayats being revealed that this ayah should go here, this ayah should go there. So we have this, as I said, fail-safe system in order to ensure that the Quran, as was being revealed, was preserved. In Taraweeh, it was being recited. Annually, it was being checked and assessed by Jibreel alayhi salam. The Sahaba radiallahu anhu ajma'in were hearing the Quran again and again and again and again and again. And as I said, they had a very phenomenal memories because they lived in such pure states that weren't being infiltrated. Like, unfortunately, our minds are constantly being attacked and sidetracked by so many things, social media, reading things which have no relevance, scrolling on Facebook, all this sort of thing, where our mind is being preoccupied. And when our mind is being preoccupied, we don't get that solitude and serenity which is required in order to memorize texts of this nature. Similarly, because of our sins, which are excessive, then obviously that also prevents us memorizing. We find that obviously Sayyidina Abu Bakr anhu preserved the Quran and put it together as a single text in the passing of the Prophet ﷺ. And we know that task was repeated again in the era of Sayyidina Uthman anhu, in which then we get the final version, which is referred to as the Uthmani print. Obviously, during the time of Sayyidina Abu Bakr, the Quran was being recited constantly in so many masjids, in so many cities. Similarly, when Sayyidina Umar became the Khalif, it was being recited in so many cities, in so many masjids. Similarly, when obviously Sayyidina Uthman became the Khalif, it was being recited in so many cities, in so many masajids. Now, there are small differences that exist, but these aren't necessarily significant differences which change the Quran whatsoever, just dialectical changes. Because bear in mind, there was no dots. So like you get the two dots above the ta, you get the two dots beneath the ya, you get the dot under the ba. There were no dots. Similarly, there were no harakat, there was no fatha, kasra, dhamma, mad, and all this. And also there were no full stops as such, okay, in order to determine where there was a pause. All these were added afterwards, because obviously the people who were coming after the tabi'in were those who did not have close contact with the companions, who had heard the Quran directly from the Prophet ﷺ himself or from senior companions they had heard it from. So that preservation was there. And to this day, that has been preserved, and we know that. But the ahadith is slightly different. The ahadith were sayings of the Prophet ﷺ. And these were initially not recorded. Initially. And the reason why the Prophet ﷺ forbade the recording of his statements, because he did not want the companions to confuse the matter in which his words, ﷺ, were confused with the words of Allah. Once the companions became somewhat aware of this and they developed this discipline that they could tell which were the words of the Prophet ﷺ and which words were revelation, then the Prophet ﷺ permitted them to record them. And so we have numerous companions who had scriptures, sahifas, containing the words of the Prophet ﷺ. And they could easily be checked, easily could be assessed. So it wasn't a problem. When the Prophet ﷺ passed away, and the generations of the Sahaba, especially the Al-Khulafa Rashidun, moved on, we started to get people coming forward and making statements that, oh, I heard the Prophet ﷺ say this. Before that was never questioned. When a companion came forward and said, oh, I heard the Prophet ﷺ said this, it was taken on face value. Similarly, when a Tabi came forward and he said, I heard the Prophet ﷺ said this, then there was some element of questioning. But when after the Tabi, then obviously when the three golden generations were gone, then there was this element where there needed to be certainty that when a person said, I heard the Prophet ﷺ say this, then clearly that person did not hear the Prophet ﷺ say this, because he's now of the fourth generation. The companions, they were around the Prophet ﷺ, so they can say, I heard the Prophet ﷺ say this, because they were companions, so they must have heard him. Similarly, the followers of the companions, when they said, oh, I heard the Prophet ﷺ say this, then obviously in this regard, they are the ones who would have heard it from a companion. And we know the Prophet ﷺ has said that the best of generations are those who are amongst me. You hear it in the Jummah khutbah, and then those who come after them, and then those who come after them. But when the generations came after, now you see people were just saying, I heard the Prophet ﷺ say this, oh, I heard the Prophet ﷺ say that, oh, I heard the Prophet ﷺ. So then we saw the muhaddithun coming together. Somebody, we had that conversation a few days back about where the four schools of fiqh come from, how were they established, why did they come about, and you saw the rationale for them. This rationale was slightly different. This was now that anybody and everybody could claim that they heard the Prophet ﷺ say this, and this is dangerous. Okay, this is dangerous. Nobody's going to come forward and say, oh, there's a verse missing from Surah Al-Baqarah, this verse, because that would be rejected immediately. Why would it be rejected immediately? Because obviously, without doubt, the companions had heard the Prophet ﷺ, reciting the Quran. They had heard the Khulafa Rashidun had recited the Quran. It had been collated at least twice Nobody had said anything. The first 3 generations had not said anything. And then suddenly somebody in the 4th generation comes along and says, oh, there's a verse missing in Surah Baqarah. It just does not make sense. It defeats logic, so it would be rejected outright. Whereas when a hadith comes, because now there was no absolute collation of hadith from the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there were collections, but not complete collections. Is okay, is this person telling the truth, or this person? Understand what the rationale is for what. Now, when we say hadith, okay, there are 3 parts. So, for example, we have what's called the isnad. Now, the isnad is the chain from the narrator to the Prophet ﷺ. So, for example, if a companion says, I heard the Prophet ﷺ say, Sami'tu Rasulullah sallallahu yaqul, or Qala Rasulullah sallallahu sallam, then we can accept it because he is a Sahabi. So, obviously, he heard the Prophet ﷺ. But a tabi, or a person who comes after, he cannot say, I heard the Prophet ﷺ. So he must say, I heard my Ustad Fala, mentioning that he heard his Ustad Fala, mentioning that he heard Sayyidina Abu Huraira, mentioning that he heard the Prophet ﷺ. So now we've got a chain. Okay, now we have a chain. So for example, if I say to you that I never saw my grandfather, okay, I never met my grandfather. And if I say to you, my grandfather said that there was a time when the villagers would take great pride in ulama living amongst them. Now villagers see the ulama as a burden. Now you're going to say, oh, hold on, Mufti, how can you say that your grandfather said this when you just told us earlier that you never met your grandfather? So I'll say that's correct, because I heard my father say it. And my father heard his father say it. So now you have, my great-grandfather, who heard his father say it. So my great-grandfather said that villagers used to take great respect, used to see ulama in their village as a sign of respect and great honor. And now he says, unfortunately, villagers see the ulama as a burden upon their wealth. Now, I've never met my great-grandfather. I've never met my grandfather. So how can I narrate this to you? Well, I'm narrating this to you because my father narrated it to me. Did my father ever meet his grandfather? No, my father never met his grandfather. So how does he know? He's narrating it from his father, who is my grandfather. Did my grandfather meet his father? Yes, he did. So now we have a chain. This is called isnad. This is called isnad. So I cannot say to you who my great-grandfather said, because you're going to say, well, Mufti, you never heard your great-grandfather. You said the two of you never met. Now here I've made a declaration. I've told you that we've never met. But imagine I didn't tell you that we've never met. Imagine I never told you that we never met. Now you have to do research into me to find out, did Mufti Saab ever meet his grandfather? Well, his grandfather was obviously not in England, because we know that Mufti Saab's father came to England. So therefore, if his father came to England, which year did his father come to England? So then you'd research that. You'd find out that my father traveled in year X, 1966 or something. Okay. Then you'd say, okay, then when did your grandfather pass away? So if I say to you, my grandfather passed away in 1972 or something, or 73, or maybe 74. So then when did your great-grandfather pass away? I'll say my great-grandfather passed away in the 1930s, in the 1930s. So you know I wasn't born in the 1930s. As much as I look like I was born in the 1930s, I'll tell you I was not born in the 1930s. So therefore, when did we meet? So this is where the isnad comes in. Okay. So the isnad is the chain from the original speaker of the hadith to the speaker who's talking to you. Then you have what's called the matan. Now the matan itself is the actual statement. That's the matan. So isnad plus matan. Now what we get predominantly is we will also give the transmitter. This wasn't a case back in the day, but in this present day, in the modern era, we also give who was it transmitted by. So we will say Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Sunan ibn Majah, Sunan al-Tirmidhi, Amit Tirmidhi, you know, Sunan Daraqutni. We'll give that. So what we're giving out, and we'll very rarely give the isnad, because the isnad now is found within the transmitter. Because we will say, go to Sahih al-Bukhari, find a hadith, and you will see the isnad in Sahih al-Bukhari. Okay, so that's where it came out. Let me just see if there's anything I can add from some of the notes from here. There is an ayah in the Quran, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. Well, there's numerous ayahs in the Quran, but the one I'm drawing your reference to is Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu in ja'akum fasikum binaba'in fatabayyanu. That all those of you who believe, when a fasik comes to you with news, carry out your research. Now, it's very important to understand this. First of all, we have to, just from this piece of ayah, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu in ja'akum fasiqun. So the first assessment has to be carried out on the narrator. How do we know if the narrator is a fasik or he's not a fasik? So we have to do that research first. So the Quran was actually laying down the rules of how to determine khabar, akhbar, which comes to you, news which comes to you. How do you assess it? How do you value it? That was what was being discussed here. So, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu in ja'akum fasiqun. So the first assessment that needs to be carried out is on the narrator. What can you assess on the narrator? What was his memory like? Was he becoming forgetful? Was he known to lie? Was he deceitful? Has he given false witness? Okay. Did he ever meet this person? Did he live in the same era? And all this information about the individual. Who is this individual? His name seems unknown, majhul. Who is the individual? Where did he live? How old was he? What if this individual was 1 year old when the person he's narrating from died? Is it possible that a 1 year old could narrate a hadith? Probably not. So it draws suspicion. Was he upright? Was he thiqah? So all these things will be assessed. The next thing to assess is the naba'in. Is the statement he's making, has this statement been made previously? Is this the first time this statement is coming to you? One of the things I said to you at the beginning of this lecture was that if somebody came in the era after the tabi'in, after the followers of the followers, and said, "Ooh, this verse is from Surah Baqarah," we would reject it outright. Why would we reject it outright? Because we have had 3 generations, and if we include the Prophet ﷺ, we won't include the Prophet ﷺ for now, we have had 3 generations of the elite individuals who knew the Quran better than the back of their hands, and not a single one of them, we're talking in excess of 100,000, 200,000 people, maybe more, 500,000 people, and not a single one of them said, "Oh, hold on a second here, there's a verse missing in Surah Baqarah." And then we get this chap who was probably born after the tabi'in suddenly saying, "Oh, guess what? There's a verse missing from Surah Baqarah, and this is it." It will be rejected outright. So you can see the methodology that was being played out. This methodology was unique to that era. This encyclopedia, there are books, there are encyclopedias on narrators in alphabetical order, in different forms, in different orders. And they literally, a short biography is written about that narrator. So if you want to do the science of Takhrijul Hadith, which is to determine the hukm of the hadith, you can still do that to this day. You can go and take, if you have the encyclopedias of the narrators, you'll find a chain. You will locate the individuals within that chain. You will find those individuals in those books, and then you'll be able to give a hukm on that hadith. Like the way Imam Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala did. As he gave, and he called it Sahih. Or like you go to Jami' Tirmidhi, and you'll get Hasan, Sahih, Gharib, wa ghayra, all these different ahkam that are placed on it. So this was a unique thing, this encyclopedic approach to biographize all the narrators. Never been heard of before. Okay, never been heard of before. That was introduced. Its benefits are that when a hukam is placed upon the hadith, you can then start to derive rulings from it. So when something is mutawatir, something is sahih, you can now start to establish rules of aqidah on there. When something is of a lesser value, you can determine fiqh from it. Lesser value, you can then start to determine akhlaq, adab from it. Source in of itself. In fact, Imam Muslim reports in his introduction of his Sahih, just to emphasize the point I made earlier, that Ibn Sirin, the famous Tabi, said they never used to ask about the isnad. But when the civil war broke out, they would say, name towards your narrators. Those who belonged to Ahl Sunnah, their ahadith were accepted, and those who were innovators, their ahadith were rejected. And that serves that as an introduction. I'm just going to quickly look to see if we've covered all the potential questions that came up. I have a theme exploring the chain of narrations for hadith, why the system exists, how it functions, and its benefits. So I think I have done that some justice in answering that question. Okay. So let's just look at the questions which have come up on the YouTube. Wa alaikum salam wa alhamdulillah, all is good. I have heard opposing opinions on whether we're allowed to pray salah with our shoes on. The earth is proclaimed as being pure, so as long as we haven't walked on any impurity, would it be permissible? Yes, I have. It would be great if these things, if these themes were uploaded as their own separate videos later. Interesting. Yes, I have a video on that. Okay, I have a video on the wearing shoes. Okay, so on this channel, so please find that. What to do, Iman, is if you just send me that last question, then I can share it with my team, and then they can split out the themes as well, inshallah, if they have time. But just send me that last bit as a question directly to me, so that I have it on my system. Okay, let me just check the Markuz Liftha wal Qadha whilst we are waiting for more questions to come up. No, the chaps has all been dealt with as far as I can see. Let's see on the ladies' front. The ladies, all the questions are done as well. Alhamdulillah. So we're up to scratch on there. I don't think I received any questions other than that. No. Okay. So I haven't forgotten that next week, one of the themes is going to be on Ramadan, particularly many of the questions that we get around Ramadan. So that has to be one of the themes for next week. So maybe I can go for Saturday, inshallah. Saturday on Ramadan. Get really organized now, hey? Thinking 1 week ahead. Goodness me, whatever next. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Okay, that's that. Planning ahead for the themes for next week. Whilst we wait for the questions to come in, I will take this opportunity to remind you for the theme for the next episode. The theme for the next episode is going to be around how divorce works. So many confused about how divorce works. What is a revocable divorce? What is an irrevocable divorce? We've heard of something called talaqi raj'i. We've heard of talaqi ba'in. What is the sunnah divorce? Should you give one divorce? Should you give two? How long is the iddah that the lady has to serve? Can you give with talaq with explicit words? Can you give talaq with implied words, figurative words? Is an intention required in any of those circumstances? And many more. So that's going to be the theme in the next episode. All matters concerning with divorce. So if you do have questions on that particular topic, then please do come online in the next episode, which inshallah, all being well, will be tomorrow. But I always say next episode now, because sometimes obviously I get caught up with something which then I can't be available. But that is going to be the aim. So inshallah, please do bear that in mind so you can have some questions ready for that. Jazakumullah khair. Let me give a couple of minutes to see if there are any other outstanding questions, as some more people have joined on the Insta Live. Let's see if there's get an opportunity to ask one or two before we get a chance to close early today, mashallah. Very rarely do I get a chance to finish early. Alhamdulillah. So I think that looks like it for today. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Do you have a question? Zazil, if I pronounced it properly. If you do, please do ask away, because if we don't get anything in the next 90 seconds or so, then I'll be able to say that we are done for today, and we will be available for next time round, inshallah. Iman, don't forget to send me that last question. It would be great if these themes were uploaded as their own separate videos later. During Taraweeh Salah, which type of mistakes would break the Salah? The same mistakes that would break any Salah. Taraweeh Salah is no different than any other Salah. So whatever is considered as a nullifier of Salah is a nullifier of Taraweeh. There's no difference at all. Can I pray 8 rakat Taraweeh rather than ignoring the Taraweeh prayer altogether? Only on days I can't pray. Yeah, you should try to do, as you know, if for whatever reason that you cannot perform 20, now it shouldn't be too much of a problem. I appreciate there were days gone by when we were in the middle of summer and it was exceptionally difficult to pray 20 rakats because literally, as I said, those days you were breaking fast at sort of 9:50, 9:55. And then you were going to the masjid for 11, 11:15. And then you were sort of praying Taraweeh till 1:45. And then you were coming back. And for those of us like me who were making suhoor then, as because Fajr start time was like 1:04, then you've got literally no time whatsoever. So, you know, in those circumstances, I can understand. But now, you know, most Taraweeh is going to start 8 o'clock. And, you know, who goes to sleep at 8 o'clock? And what else would a person be doing after 8 o'clock? You know, what can a person be doing? So, and it's the month of Ramadan. So even if there's something really important, can't it just be rescheduled? Most people don't go to sleep till 10, 11 o'clock anyway. So why can we not? We should be trying to pray more. Yani, even Qiyamul Layl now, we've got more chance of it now because obviously Taraweeh we can pray early and then we've got all the evening to ourselves. We've got to try to pray more. So I wouldn't say really, I cannot see how circumstances would be such that one can't pray the 20 rakats. So that's why I'm, you know, unless you can elaborate on your circumstances, as I say, I'm finding it difficult to accept that will be the situation that a person is in. Let's give another minute in case we've got some folk who just want to put a question in. Okay, I think it seems we have met our fill in questions. So, inshallah, on that note, I will ask permission to depart. And as I've already mentioned, tomorrow's session is going to be on all matters to do with divorce. So please do share the links. Please do share the videos with others so others can benefit from them. And there may be people who have queries around divorce. We get lots of questions coming in with divorce, unfortunately. So tomorrow is a good session to jump on and ask those questions. So as usual, we'll give our sort of 25 minutes overview of the particular topic, of the particular subject, and then we will take questions on that. Obviously, we take questions that are outside of that topic as well. But as I said, my main focus is for the first 20 minutes or so is to pick up questions which are directly to do with that topic, inshallah. So till our next session, wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.